This conference will now be recorded.
I will now call to order this meeting of the Monmouth City Council for July 20th, 2021. And we will take the roll call, please. Phyllis.
Councillor Belts.
Here.
Councillor Carey.
Here.
Councillor Lopez.
Here.
Councillor McKeel.
Present.
Councillor Oberst.
Yes.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros.
Here.
Mayor Coon.
I am here. And Councillor Salinas Oliveros, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to its republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the consent calendar, and this includes the minutes of the council meeting of July 6th, 2021. If there are any additions or corrections to the minutes, please let us know. Otherwise, a motion to approve the consent calendar is presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Belts. And yeah, we have the advantage here. Not having to hit the mute button, so, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, thank you very much. This evening, we do have room reserved for public comment. I don't see anyone in the room to provide public comment. Phyllis, did we have anything submitted in writing or anyone who would like to join us remotely tonight?
We did not make it.
All right, we shall move forward with our business agenda, and it's pretty exciting here in the room. We have some members of the Monmouth Planning Commission, and I see we have a couple of folks online as well representing that group. So we will start with our Community and Economic Development Director, Suzanne Duffner, and our Planning Commission Chair, Stephen Howard.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, City Council. As the Mayor mentioned, my name is Suzanne Duffner, Community and Economic Development Director at the City of Monmouth, and we are here tonight to hear a little update on Planning Commission activities over the last year. They have been very busy, so I think you'll find it interesting to see how much work they've been doing despite COVID. I did want to do a brief introduction. We have Commissioner Howard, who is our current chair. He'll be giving the presentation tonight. We're also joined by Commissioner Bill Foster, who's here in the room, and Commissioner Randy Lowry. And then on the go-to meeting, we have Commissioner Tom Burkholder there as well. So thanks all for attending, and I'll turn the time over to Commissioner Howard.
Well, Council and Mayor, I've got a list of things that we have done over the last year and some things we're looking forward to doing in the coming year. Planning requests in the city that we've covered in the last year is we've done 5 design reviews, including a cell tower in the north end of town, the Monmouth Commons going up downtown here, Dry Town Tap Station, and the Starbucks and O'Reilly Auto that are going up in Ash Creek Station. We reviewed and approved an 80-unit multifamily development on Riddle Road. We reviewed and recommended an annex for 43 acres into the city, which is on 99. We also reviewed and recommended approval of 2 comprehensive plan map amendments, one for the Ron Wilson Center to join the downtown district, and one for Ash Creek Station itself. For long-range planning activities, we had 2 major things. One was to review and recommend approval of 2 legislative amendments, the city's flood hazard protection and the Parks Master Plan. And we also spent a good deal of time completing phase 1 of the TGM Code Assistant project. Next year, we are looking to jump right into phase 2 of the TGM project. And continue doing land use applications. Ash Creek Station continues to develop, and there's a subdivision on the north, to the north of General Woods Park. We are going to begin updating the economic element of the comprehensive plan and complete a housing production strategy now that we've got our housing needs analysis done. And that is what we are hoping to accomplish. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Never a group to sit still. So that's very sort of specific and minute work as well as really major work. And again, you guys did a tremendous job. Do we have any questions or comments for the Planning Commission? I'm not seeing any.
I sort of have one. And first of all, good to see my prior colleagues from the Planning Commission. I miss you guys. So we're all aware of the homeless situation in Oregon, particularly in the Valley. And there's been kind of a rising mutter that land use planning is partially to blame for the homeless situation. And I'm aware that there's, and Suzanne, this may be a little bit more for you than for the commission, but there's a notion that there's one of the goals in a comp plan that should be around making sure you're building housing that reflects the income distribution of your community. And that across the state, cities have just been not doing that. And that's the problem. It's not land use planning, it's the kind of housing that we're putting on the land we have. And I just wonder if you have any response to that. You know, what's your feeling about that? I know that 1,000 Friends is kind of pushing that version of why we have a problem. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely you know, the affordable housing issue is a really complicated problem. You know, we know we have housing shortages, and you know, I think it's oversimplification to just blame it on the land use system. Cities, our role is to provide sufficient land that's zoned appropriately, and then we rely on the market and developers to primarily build that. And unfortunately, that's not delivering it, especially for the lowest of the low income, you know, housing, where there's not, you know, those profits, I guess, margins to be made. So that's where we rely on partnerships and subsidies to try to build that. So I think, you know, that's part of the reason that we wanted to apply for that DLCD grant. So if you recall that the council gave us a letter of support for that housing production strategy, because we've gone through the numbers, you know, kind of the cookbook analysis of how much land we need, but to actually affect the change and implement that, you know, we need some more specific strategies in place, I think, to work with the builders and work with the nonprofits and, you know, try to get some housing built at those more affordable income levels, because, you know, just looking at the rates of the housing prices and yeah, it's pretty mind boggling to think of people being able to afford that if they're only supposed to be spending 1/3 of their income on housing. You know, that's what's considered affordable. So short answer, I'm sorry, I don't have the solution to that problem, but definitely acknowledge that it's an issue, and I'm glad that the council has that in their priorities of something to look at and continue to work on here locally.
If I may. One of the things that came out of the end of the housing analysis project was a list of recommendations of things to explore. So that's something we can take into this next process, whether that's working with land trusts or looking at the feasibility of a small town like us mandating a certain affordable housing standards. Or there was probably a dozen or so recommendations of things we can start taking a look at. So it is definitely top of mind.
Great. Anything else? Councilor McKeel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to echo Councilor Oberst's statement about the need for the lower income housing. That actually was my question, and I'm concerned that, not to be disrespectful, but I'm concerned that we may be losing ground on this by spending time looking into it, because we've had, if I'm correct, we've had 2 developments that were looking at building houses since I've been on council. Neither of those developments are for the lower priced homes that are so critical for families getting started into owning a home, which, as everybody knows here, is so critical for having a foot into stability. So it would be really great if we could get this figured out before the next set of land it comes to the council to say we want to build homes on this, so that we have a really clear sense of how much of that land needs to be purposed towards those starter homes. The other thing I think we might want to put on our radar, I've been in conversations with Councilor Lopez with the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. I'm good, I'm glad I got that right. And they're in the investigation of tiny homes. So where people can't necessarily afford to get into a home, but there are other options for people who are houseless to be able to have a place to live. I know Rita O'Grady, if I got her last name correct, with the CDC, is very interested in partnering with Monmouth to find land that can be used for the starter homes. And she says she's got a builder that's ready to go if we can get the builder some land.
That's Suzanne taking notes. So.
Yeah, sorry. I guess just a quick response on the 2 housing developments that are for single family are market rate. And I guess I would point out that our housing needs analysis does identify all types of needed housing and all income. So, you know, they're the private property rights where they're able to build what our zoning and our codes allow, you know, that are at play and work there. But I'd also point out, though, the 80 unit multifamily project on Riddle Road is in that multifamily category and will provide some more additional affordable housing. So I don't disagree. I heartily agree that, you know, we need to look at more options and how to be a facilitator in the development of those. There's just a lot of moving pieces and parts to you know, securing land, buying lands, and you know, making that happen. But certainly looking forward to working on those issues together.
If I may ask a question of Ms. Duffner, is the 80 family unit, are those units that can be purchased by families, or are those rentals?
They will be rentals. Mm-hmm.
And it's great to have rentals available, but I think we also really need to be focused on helping people get a foot into their own financial stability with starter homes.
Right, and I guess I'd also point out that what's one of the purposes of why we're doing the code assistance update, because our code has a number of barriers to what we call that middle housing type that will facilitate row houses and townhomes that can be attached owner occupied units, as well as a way for starter homes for folks to be able to get their foot in the door and build some equity on those. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Ms. Duffner. And
yeah,
Mr. Howard.
Yeah, I think a lot of the incentives you hear about other communities using to really encourage that, we just don't have available, right? I mean, being able to help developers incentivize them to build those things. What are some of the solutions other communities have used?
Yeah, so that's something that, you know, again, that we would look at and evaluate a little bit more detail in that on a housing production strategy. But some of the tactics that communities have used is looking at SDC reductions or waivers for certain affordable housing projects that reach a certain level of the market. They have to balance that with our infrastructure needs and what that might mean as one way. And then, you know, we still do have the tool of urban renewal, and we actually have some residential zone property in that. So, I mean, I think there's, you know, for the short amount of time that we have left on urban renewal, there's that tool in the toolbox as well. So those are just kind of a couple. Then the other big one again is that just getting the barriers out of our code that will help facilitate some of this development. I want to say I just can't overstate that one enough, as it's one of our roles as a regulator of the housing, and that adds to cost of development. So yeah, those I think are just kind of a few top of the head ones that come off, but you know, I think we'll explore that more in some work sessions that we'll be having on those in the near future. So.
All right, thank you. Seeing no additional comments and questions, thanks again to our planning commissioners and for all your work. And look forward to the things you're going to bring us in the coming year.
Sounds good. Thank you. Oh, actually, I'm going to.
Yes, now you can
See you
stay,
right
because speaking of dropping barriers to development, we have an item, and that is our legislative amendment 21-01, considering the first reading, but also we talked about the potential, if it's the will of the group, to conduct our second reading and declare an emergency at this time. So
that requires unanimous vote.
Pardon me?
And that requires a unanimous vote to do first and second reading at this meeting.
Right.
Yep.
So I know there were some sort of hesitance about that. So I'm kind of interested in the will of the group, but I think perhaps the best way to do that is to make a motion and let's discuss on that basis. See if it goes. So well, go ahead and have a brief staff report.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I didn't have much. Yeah. What are we voting on? Right. Yeah, no, yeah, that's great. Thank you for the explanation about the first reading and the ordinances. I'll just point out, this is an ordinance to consider amending the city zoning ordinance to reduce the side yard setbacks in the low density residential zone district from 15 feet to 10 feet. So 5 feet on each side. This is something that you've had a public hearing on July 6th, where the vote was to approve that and bring an ordinance back. So that's what we have this evening. I'd point out that the Planning Commission also had a public hearing on this on June 16th, at the close of which they also recommended approval of the proposed change after evaluating some other city codes and rationale for that change. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. You do have both versions of the ordinance that are attached. The only difference is one has the emergency clause that would make it become the change effective immediately. If the emergency clause is not passed, then we'll bring back second reading like we would traditionally at your next meeting, and then it becomes effective 30 days after that second reading is approved. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Belts and then Councillor Lopez.
I'm trying to remember, is the intent of modifying this, one of the intents to make it so that we can have a little bit more density?
Yeah, I think having smaller setbacks can facilitate more efficient, more dense use of land. That's certainly one of the objectives. It also helps provide some more flexibility on the house plans and the design, the layout of the lot. One of the reasons we heard for this amendment coming forward was that there was a need for more single-story homes, and it's easier to develop those when you have that 5-foot setback on each side. So, you know, this change will be consistent. We'll still comply and exceed the setback requirements that the building codes enact for fire and life safety. So there's not an issue there. So yeah, it does help with a little more efficient use of that land. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Councillor Lopez and then Councillor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much for all the staff work that's gone into this. In the interest of framing the conversation, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 1399, an ordinance adopting amendments to Chapter 18.50 of the Monmouth Zoning Code and Development Ordinance relating to low-density residential RS zone side yard setback requirements. Legislative Amendment 21-01 and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
This is first reading
Right,
first,
yes.
so I think it's a question of which version does the council want to adopt? There's one that if they approve it unanimously can be acted on first reading, which is just first reading, and then moved to approval.
Okay.
So we don't need a motion quite yet. I think we need to know, though, maybe for discussion, which version the council is aiming for. And really the question is there anyone in opposition?
Right.
Because if there is, then the answer is clear. We just do first reading tonight, and then we bring it back to you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah.
I retract my motion with the interest of allowing a first reading to occur as due process.
And again, just a question of which one.
Which
And
question?
then the question I think really is anyone opposed to first and second reading with an emergency clause tonight? And if there is, then we just do first reading and we move ahead to the next meeting.
I will take that temperature. Thank
Yeah.
you to Lane Shirley, our city attorney, for that. So please indicate at this time if there is anyone who would prefer that we move forward on a first reading only tonight and be able to bring this back, and which would cause us to delay that at least until our next meeting, other than declaring the emergency and going through the whole process tonight. So if anyone is opposed to doing this all in one motion, all in one reading,
One go.
all in one go,
So to borrow from
Please
Councilor
speak up.
Carey, this gives me just a little bit of heartburn, but it's not bad enough for me to object. And I would favor going ahead and passing a motion, including an emergency clause.
one go. All right. Counselor McKeel.
Yeah, I would like the public to be able to weigh in on this. I think this is not a little bit of squeezing in with houses. I don't believe that where they're trying to do this in this new subdivision, whatever, is necessarily trying to bring in a lot of starter homes. These are just trying to get more homes into an annex. And I think the public needs to have another opportunity to weigh in on shrinking that yard size. And I'm assuming that's what a second reading would allow.
No, there won't be another hearing on it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
already been
The
discussed.
public hearing was the opportunity for public hearing, two of those, one at the commission level, one at the council level. That's really the opportunity for them to speak to the concept that is going forward in the legislative amendment. Typically people are always welcome to make a public comment, but we don't open a hearing. We don't add testimony to the record at this point.
Right, I meant public comment. I'm sorry, public comment. I think they should be able to come in and make public comment
So,
that they don't want a 5-foot yard space, so.
sure. And we didn't have anyone at the public hearing. We haven't had any written comments, and we don't have anyone here tonight to make comment. So
How do we, excuse me, I'm sorry, how do we get the word out to let people know that this is coming up to change this yard size?
Suzanne can answer,
Yeah.
certainly, because she has to do a lot of legal notices for one thing.
Yeah, so for a legislative amendment to our code, we're required to give notice in a local newspaper. And so we provide that notice to the Polk IO of the two public. So we've had 2 public hearing dates. And then if we have folks that request direct notification, then we also send it to what we call those interested parties as well. So notice has been provided in the IO, and there were a couple, so of course Larry Dalton that requested the amendment was on the interested party notice, requested that notification, and he's forwarded on to some of the builders that he works with on that. So that's what our code requires for the legislative amendment process.
Do we, for this kind of thing, is it appropriate to put it into the city newsletter that comes out with utility bills?
We
Because
haven't.
this is going to, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is going to be impacting how people will have their yards in the future. And there was a comment last council meeting that, you know, people can make the decision to buy or not buy, but if we're allowing builders to push houses in closer, then that's going to limit what people are going to be able to choose to buy.
Councilor McKeel, if you are not interested and willing to move forward, then I don't know what the discussion will do to you know, amplify that, right? So if you would like, we can do if you are not in favor of moving forward, we'll do the first reading tonight, and you can assist in getting the word out so that if you feel people didn't have an opportunity to provide public comment, then we'd be able to get that out. I mean, it's in our agenda, it's been in our packet. You know, we do a lot of code amendment work that I don't think the timing is hard for the newsletter, right? You have a deadline to get that in, and we aren't always able to plan our hearings around that. So
well,
but we can wait.
I want to apologize for appearing argumentative. It's kind of like, wow, I've never disagreed with the council before, so it makes me kind of, you know, but anyway, sorry.
It's not that. If you'd like to wait, then, and you are not fully in favor of moving forward tonight, then say so. And that's a no, and we'll do the first reading. That's all.
I would rather wait. Thank you. I'm sorry. And again, I'm sorry for appearing to be argumentative. Don't mean to be at all.
You're not. Okay. I don't need anyone else's vote at this time. We are not unanimous to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and declare a first reading of ordinance number 1399, adopting amendments to chapter 18.50 of the Monmouth Zoning and Development Ordinance relating to low density residential zone side yard setback requirements. So that we will have the first reading, and we will have a second reading at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next order of business tonight is a report from our police department. We have our Chief Isaiah Haynes here this evening, along with a couple of other members of his force that I think he'll be introducing to us.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Today, I thought it was appropriate to just update the council really on the status and kind of what's going on just at the PD. There's a lot of moving parts, and sometimes it's tough to put into words. So I tried to give some clarity or I'll try to clarify my staff report anyways, my bullet points. So really, I just want to start off with and talk about really our staffing and where we're at. And as you kind of look through this table that I put together here, you'll see that obviously currently I'm filling the interim chief of police role, and Matt Olofson is filling the interim lieutenant. We have 3 sergeants. However, one of those sergeants is retiring here at the end of next month. And currently, due to staffing, what I would just point out is that really our patrol sergeants usually are a supervisory role, and they're in the field assisting with calls, but supervising in the field, and they have collateral duties. Currently, just because we are kind of short where we're at, they're being used for patrol coverage. As we move down there, you'll see a name on there, Patrol Sergeant Jeff Hodney. And I'll just use this time to say that Jeff Hodney was recently promoted on the 15th of July, and we are happy to have him in that position. But he too will be still covering patrol during this time. So, but he will take Sergeant Kim Dorn's spot here officially next month. So. Our 2 detectives currently are helping also with patrol coverage. And getting down to the officers, we do have 1 officer currently on paternity leave. He had the They just welcomed the birth of their daughter, which was a pretty awesome thing for them. And we have another officer that is actually about to go on paternity leave here in a few weeks. So we have another officer that I will point out is on light duty due to injury, and that will be 6 weeks. And we also have another officer that is moving out of state and looking to retire. So those are just things that I will point out right now, that there's a lot of moving parts. You can see that we don't have a super large department, and I will just point out really quick that Lieutenant Olafson has done an amazing job really managing all of these moving parts right now to make sure that we have adequate coverage and where we need it. So he's done a great job, and I will just publicly acknowledge really the department with all the changes happening and where we're at. They've done an amazing job stepping up for one another, and again, making sure that we have coverage where it's needed and filling in on those shifts. So you will meet 2 new officers tonight. One of them currently is in FTEP, and you will see him here in a few minutes. And then another new officer behind me is Darian Hanfield, who I'll introduce here in another second as well. Kind of going down through this list here, you'll see too that we have a second records clerk, which has been great to have her now full-time, and she is currently still in that training for the evidence tech position that she was filling in for Yolanda Allen, who recently retired after 33 years. And then here towards the bottom, our community service officer, Chase Gibson, who's been with us for a few years, doing a great job. He is one that has applied actually through our full-time police position and has been identified as a good potential candidate. So there is a likelihood that with some movement that he will be our next full-time police officer. So that is still waiting on one of the other officers who is looking to leave for his spot to be open. So I know that's a lot of things, and I would just say if there's any questions about the staffing, I'd be happy to answer those now before I move on to the training piece.
Nope, don't see any questions for you.
Okay. So just to give an update on where we're at with training, we do have, currently we have nobody that's in the basic police academy right now. We do have, if our community service officer is hired, he will attend the academy, and tentatively that is scheduled for October 25th through March 3rd. Our newest hire, it was a blessing that he has already been through the academy, and so we have saved a lot of training time there. Now we just have him through our field training process, and hopefully we will have him soloed and helping us on the road here very shortly. Just to touch on our field training evaluation program, we did have an officer just recently complete that. And that is Officer Hanfield, who's behind me right now, and he's done a great job. He just recently this month went solo, and again, as you know, and I kind of outlined in that brief that he's sorely needed right now. So he's filling a big spot for us, and we're really happy to have him. And our newest officer is in field training program right now, and he is, I believe, through week 3. So he's got about 12 or 13 weeks left to go on that program before he gets solo. Our annual training, have a list here, and there's a whole lot of stuff that we do every year. And really 2020, when our biggest kind of slowdown with COVID, we used a lot of that time for online training. It was a good time to catch up on some of the things that we haven't done for quite a while. And so we had a lot of training in 2020. 2021 has been a little bit slower, and that's just because of our staffing. But just to give an update on some of the things, I'll outline some of the stuff that we have done. We've completed our annual requirements for ethics. We've done our ethics training. We've had several people go through leadership, some different diversity, equity, and inclusion courses. I've spoke about those here recently. We've had people through resource allocation and deployment training, legislative updates, EVOC, which is our emergency vehicle operators course, active threat response. We've sent several officers to be instructors for force on force instructor and tactical de-escalation. We have done most of our use of force training for this year. So I have a whole bunch of other things that we have done, and I will save some time and not go through every single one of those. But every year there is an annual requirement from DPSST that says we have to get 8 hours of use of force and 1 hour of ethics, and that is the minimum requirements. And then every officer, when they're hired, is put on a 3-year loop, and that loop really says that you have to have, additionally to that annual requirement, you have to have 84 hours of training over those 3 years, and they can be in various disciplines. And then everyone has to have their first aid CPR at all times. And furthermore, everyone on our supervisory staff, sergeants, lieutenant, and myself, have to have an additional 24 hours of leadership training that they have over those 3 years. So we have always far exceeded those qualifications, and we are still doing that. So that's kind of a screenshot on where we're at currently. Still yet to come this year. We have some officers going to be range instructors. They're called TCCC courses, which is Tactical Combat Casualty Care, and really that's medic training for people that you have significant events where there's injuries, and obviously it's the first aid really for those significant events. So we have one officer that's going to a basic course and one that's going to an advanced course that is already he has some time being a paramedic, so he is in that advanced area. We have some investigators going to catch a predator, really online sexual corruption, type cases that they would investigate. Some new supervisors going through some pursuit management and just supervisor school. And then lastly, in December, we have what they call MILO, which is Multiple Interactive Learning Objectives training, and we will host that at our PD. And we have a few instructors, myself included, in that. And really what that is it's kind of scenario-based training that is done virtually. I say virtually. It's through a program that is on, a kind of a movie theater size screen that's calibrated, that interacts with you basically through lasers, whether it be on your different implements that you use. And there's role players that are in there, and it's really immersive and interactive training. And we haven't done that for a few years, and we need that. And so we will have that for a few weeks in December. So we're excited to get that. That's kind of an update on what we've got coming and where we're at for training. And that last bullet point for collateral duties and responsibilities, just kind of circling back to all the change that we've had. With that change, obviously there's a lot of other things that we do internally at the police department and duties that people have. And so myself, Lieutenant Olafson, and the sergeants have sat down and kind of tried to figure out what that's going to look like and who's going to have those duties. And so I can give maybe an update on that later on. So we haven't even solidified all of that quite yet, but that is underway. And I would just point out that coming up on August 3rd, we have National Night Out. We don't know exactly, we haven't ironed out all the details. I spoke with the sergeant that's in charge of that today, and I believe that we are still looking to do that jointly with Independence. We have done that the last few years, and it's been a really good turnout. And so I believe that that's what we're trying to do again. We just don't have all the details quite yet. So when we do, we will be sure to get that out for everyone, and hopefully we'll have some of you all there. Well, it's a council night, so maybe not.
So. We never get to do a national night out on the first Tuesday of the month. So yeah.
And that's really the update I have. If you guys, if there was any questions from council, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions or comments of the chief?
Can you introduce the officer who
will.
just? Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
Councilor McKee.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in before you moved on to the next part, but if there's another counselor that wants to go, I've kind of dominated the microphone lately. Okay.
No.
All right.
No, go ahead.
All right. So thank you, Chief Haynes. I was actually wondering what the plans are for having the rest of the officers to go to the Western class that was offered. I believe the the top officers, sorry, you know, you and the detectives and the sergeants have taken that, but I don't, if I remember correctly, the rest of, there's a number of officers that still need that training. And what is the plan for the rest of the force to take that training? And then also, how is the police as a group looking to implement what you've learned from the training?
Well, I will just say that I spoke on this a few meetings ago, but there have been a lot of discussions really about that training already within our department. And we have done some other trainings that are police and minority relations, the implicit bias type trainings, the Evolve experience, that Red Door project. But there is no, to my knowledge, I don't know what the current status is on the Western Oregon class, and that's something that I'll have to follow up with the city manager and other staff and see if there's a schedule for that or see how that looks. I will just say that is that will be very tricky for us to see how we can implement that, just being that it is it's a college level class that requires a lot of off-duty time, but also certain meetings that you have to make. And with shift work, that can be tricky because we have officers, of course, that you know, that work graveyard and all days of the week. And so to get everyone through that specific course will be difficult, but we will offer similar type trainings for those people. And I don't have, I guess, all the specifics, but there are quite a number of that type of training.
Well, and I'm sorry for having a confusing question, but from what the officers have learned, the sergeants and you know, as you're like understanding not just the Western class, but your police and minority training, and I mentioned Red Door, sorry, might not have heard that one correctly. You know, that actually hopefully gets you to think differently about engaging with the community, how we're reaching out, how we're working with how people are stopped in their cars, how we stop people on bicycles or whatever. And are you looking at implementing that, taking what's learned in those and then coming up with a strategy for implementation? It's the thing that we're doing in our work, you know, at in the College of Education. We're reading books, and then, okay, now what are we going to do with our students differently than we did before? So it's just, how is that happening in the police department?
It's a good question. I will say that I probably don't have a specific implementation plan, and I think that there are a lot of different ideas, a lot of different philosophies on what can be done. I think that every officer that we has takes all of these things to heart, but I don't know if I can specifically answer your question yet. And I will just say that it's one of those things that's still being talked about, that's still being learned at the PD. But I don't have a specific implementation other than we take everything that we do for training, and we talk about how to implement that and what that looks like. We interact with people every day, and I think that in many ways, our guys are doing most of the stuff that's learned already. And so I don't know that I have the other specifics, I guess, to go into yet, but I will just say that we try to implement every training that we do have. So,
Marty?
Thanks, Mayor and Council, and thanks, Chief, for that description. All of the jurisdictions that have participated in the Racial Healing Workshop with Western Oregon are awaiting the second offering of that workshop. So we have not just the folks in the police department, but in the other city departments who are awaiting an opportunity to be part of that workshop. And I would say that you did hear Chief Haynes mention the Red Door Project workshop, which, as we've talked about that offering, he was saying to me that he feels is equally or more impactful than the workshop. So I think that, I mean, I'm appreciative that the Chief is continuing to seek out opportunities for our officers to be, you know, exploring this area further. So as soon as we can, as soon as we hear from Western that they have that the workshop is available again to the next cohort, we've got a group of folks to sign up for it.
And I mean, if Red Door is just as good, it's just a training. I'm not saying Western is. I haven't seen it in the top 10 list nationally, so.
Other questions or comments for the chief? All right. Oh, Councilor Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much for the recent updates that you've given us both tonight and at previous meetings, Chief. I guess my question and or comment has to do with the current interim status. I know that you know, being in a position where you have individuals that are, you know, filling new roles or roles that they are, you know, not accustomed to, it leaves gaps other places. And I'm not saying that there's any gaps per se, but more so just asking, you know, how we can support you in, you know, in your charge and in leading this department while we do look for, you know, for a permanent answer to our you know, our staffing.
I really appreciate that, Councilor Lopez. I would just ask for some patience and I guess understanding where we're at as a staff, and know that our officers and our staff are all doing the best that they can, and I think that they're all very qualified in what they do and give this job their all. So I think that we're on our way to being where we need to be. Sometimes there's just a period of change, and it takes time to be, I guess, to be all that you can be. So that's kind of where we're at. There's going to be a lack, or not a lack, but a drop in some of the training that we do, maybe some of the outreach, but that's not because we don't want to do those things. It's just because there's not always that the manpower, the bandwidth. So as we kind of get through this transition period, but I really appreciate that, and would just ask for that understanding at this time. So.
Well, I'll absolutely try to keep that in mind. And, you know, I've seen you at numerous, you know, community engagement venues in the past, and I know that you take your own time to do these things. And, you know, we certainly ask a lot of you. I don't intend to begin asking less, but I'll absolutely be, you know, be mindful of, you know, everything that's put on your shoulders. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank your staff.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay.
And now we have an exciting event.
Yes.
Since we have the opportunity to meet some of our new officers and get them sworn on to our force.
I think what I will do just with our setting is I think I will just invite Officer Ken Wiggum and Officer Darian Hanfield just to come up here and join me. And hopefully you guys can all still hear me through the microphone if I stand up here. Just before I give the oath of office, I do want to take a minute and introduce both Officer Hanfield, Darian Hanfield here, and Officer Ken Wiggum, and talk a little bit just about each of their backgrounds so that you know who they are, and then share just a brief message. So first I'll talk about Darian here. Darian was born in Miami, Florida, but spent most of his young life growing up in Turks and Caicos Islands. As a teenager, Darian moved back to the States and eventually settled in Yakima, Washington. Darian graduated from Dwight Eisenhower High School in 2016, and Darian then attended Spokane Falls Community College for 2 years on a track and field scholarship. He received his associate's degree and then transferred to Eastern Oregon University in La Grande, where he continued his education and competed in track and field. Darian was hired by the Monmouth Police Department on October 1st, 2020, and he attended the Basic Police Academy shortly thereafter. He just recently completed his field training and evaluation and has soloed for us this month. So this is Darian Hanfield. Now I'll talk a little bit about Ken Wiggum. Ken was born and raised in Newcastle upon Tyne, Northern England. Following completion of high school, he started his apprenticeship as an electrician. He worked in this field for 6 years doing commercial, industrial, and residential electric work. Ken later switched gears and began work in social services for a private sector company, initially working with kids who were in the UK care system. During his career in social services, he had several different titles, including registered manager, operations manager, and business development director. In 2014, Ken immigrated to the US and began working again in the social services, this time with adults with developmental disabilities. In 2018, Ken began his law enforcement career, spending some time with the Benton County Sheriff's Office and the Toledo Police Department. On July 1st, Ken was hired full-time here at Monmouth Police Department. And having already attended the Basic Police Academy, Ken is currently in the Field Training and Evaluation Program. Ken Wiggum. And I will just introduce his beautiful wife back here,
Yep.
Beth, and their 2 kids. And this is my first time meeting them as well, so.
Hi.
Now I want to speak briefly just about the swearing-in ceremony. This brief ceremony may seem like a formality to some, but to Darian and Ken, this is a very significant event in their law enforcement career. Taking the oath is important and necessary in order to exercise authority as a police officer in the state of Oregon. That is the obvious reason for this ceremony, but there is more to taking the oath than just repeating words spoken out loud. For these officers tonight, in front of a public audience, they're affirming the fact that they understand the position of authority they are now in. Both Darian and Ken are affirming that they understand what it means to be a public servant and the sacrifices they will be making throughout their career to protect the residents of Monmouth. They understand that those they serve trust them to always be honest, ethical, fair, and persons of the highest integrity. Darian and Ken know they will always be held accountable for their actions and therefore will strive to keep the public's trust by always doing the right thing. This is the reason why the oath is spoken aloud and in front of a public audience such as tonight. Tonight, Darian and Ken are both making their promise to each of you to expect nothing but from the very best from them as they take on the necessary and critical role in our society. Throughout their career, both officers will be challenged. They will face adversity, they will see the good in some people, and they will see the absolute worst in others. They will help people who will be forever grateful, and they may be criticized for some who may not fully understand the actions they will have to take in order to keep themselves and their community safe. Both will be placed in harm's way at times, and they will be expected to react within seconds and certain circumstances and make the right decision every time. Some people will recognize them as heroes for what they do, while others will second guess their actions and never be satisfied for the work they perform. Darian and Ken, you both have answered a calling to serve others no matter what the circumstances. As many in our society will run away from danger, you will do the opposite. You are both of the chosen few who will run towards danger to protect people you've never met. Being a police officer is truly a calling, and I guarantee you will both experience all that I've just mentioned if you remain in law enforcement for long enough. It's not a job for the weak, but rather for those of strong mind and body. Before administering the oath, here's the most important thing that I want you to remember, and don't forget this: that you will work for each and every member of this community. Just like it states in the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, as police officer, your fundamental duty is to serve mankind. And that means help everyone, no matter who they are and for whatever reason they need help. You are the person that will be there to help those who cannot help themselves. So for these reasons, which I believe are the right reasons, I am proud at this time to administer the oath and welcome Officer Darian Hanfield and Ken Wiggum. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ken Wiggum,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Monmouth,
the charter and ordinances of the city of Monmouth,
and I will well and faithfully
and I will well and faithfully
perform the duties of police officer
perform the duties of police officer
for the city of Monmouth
for the city of Monmouth
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God. Thank you.
Congratulations, guys.
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
So great. So great.
Chief, you had another member of your department show up. Do you want to introduce him while he's here as
Sergeant
well?
Hodney back here, and this is Sergeant Hodney, who maybe many of you have not met him yet. He's been with us for, I think, 3.5 years. And Jeff he has a different background too. He was actually an engineer before his time with us, and felt a different calling. He's been with us and done a great job. He went through our promotional process, came out on top, and we're really glad to have him in that role. So this is Jeff Hodney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we get to talk about cable franchise agreements, because
How do you follow that?
that's so inspiring.
Impossible to follow that.
Thanks, Wiggum's family, for coming.
Great. Thanks.
Thank
Mayor.
you, City Manager Marty Went.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to begin a discussion and ask for your consideration for the renewal of the franchise with Spectrum Charter Communications. So generally, cities grant a franchise and it sets the terms and conditions for the company to operate and provide services within the city. Much of cable TV operation is also guided by the Federal Communications Commission. So our interaction with Charter Spectrum Cable TV is fairly limited to their presence in our city. They provide cable services to their subscribers. Their cable is lashed to our poles, and they also pay franchise fees as a franchised utility here in Monmouth. With this proposed franchise, renewing the agreement drops us very quickly into the finer details of whether and how Charter Communications would support what is called our public educational and governmental channel, our public TV channel. Or whether they would pass through a fee, also called a PEG fee, that would support our PEG channel, which is operated by WIMPEG, Western Independence Monmouth PEG TV channel. The PEG issue has been the one that has prevented us getting a franchise in place with Charter since it expired back in 2018. So in short, Monmouth has continued to insist that the channel be carried and that a PEG fee be passed through to subscribers on par with other providers such as MyNet. And Charter has refused to do so, citing regulatory and cost and other alternatives to providing PEG programming, that those are available in other ways. So because it's possible to transmit the PEG channel on the internet without requiring cable operators to carry our channel or require a contribution from the cable company, the draft franchise that I'm asking you to consider tonight is silent on requiring a PEG fee and gives a process in the future, should we request it, to ask Charter to carry the PEG channel. So as I said, I quickly dropped us into a very, very small part of what the franchise is really all about. Broadly, what the franchise is meant to do is allow Charter to operate in our city. But the issue that would get us to a place where we have an effective franchise with them really is about resolving that issue. So because it is possible for our WIMPEG channel to be with a small investment of our own PEG funds, we would be able to stream our own content on the channel and not require in the future that cable operators either pay a fee or carry our channel, as much as we would like them to. I'm bringing you a franchise that's pretty much silent on those issues because as we go forward in the future, the likelihood of being able to collect very much or ask very much of the cable operators to carry our content is probably not going to be successful. So anyway, I'll leave it at that because I gave you some background about this with the staff report in some much greater detail. I've worked with Charter Communications and their representative to reach an agreement that I said I would bring to the council so that we could discuss the terms of it. It's a franchise that spans 10 years, and as I mentioned, the PEG fee issue is not included in the the agreement. But if we were to want in the future to ask providers to carry our channel, we could do that through a process that is outlined in the franchise. I'm not sure I have a whole lot else to say because I'd like to hear if you have any discussion or questions. So with that, you have a first reading of an ordinance to consider the franchise should you decide to move it forward in its current form.
Councillor Oberst has thoughts about this.
So I've been in the middle of WMPEG and to some extent on the edges of this. I believe this has been, the current agreement has been expired for 10 years or more now.
Not that long, but.
Okay, but a while.
Yeah.
We had a 15-cent peg fee, as Marty points out in the our staff report, that in 2014 we managed to get raised to $1. When WMPEG was first set up, Charter actually bought the piece of equipment necessary to send the signal over to Dallas to be sent back this way. That piece of equipment went down and they declined to replace it. So we haven't been sending a WMPEG signal through Spectrum Charter for several years now. And the final point I would make is the way telecom's changing, this 10-year agreement could very well outlive cable television. Everybody's switching to streaming. You know, even our WMPEG package is now effectively a streaming package. It comes in through your Wi-Fi instead of through a cable. And as far as I'm concerned, we could dig our heels in and hold our breath till we turn blue, and Charter still won't agree to carry a PEG channel. And I would favor just going ahead and getting this done, because as I say, I'd rather have a franchise agreement in place and you know, go forward with this than worry about something that is effectively become a moot point because of streaming and everything else. Just, you know, like to, as somebody who was in the middle of this for way too long, say I think we're there.
Thank you. Councillor Lopez?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the work that you've done, Ms. Wine. Within the staff report, I didn't see, and perhaps I was missing it, what other communities, preferably in our area, are doing with this. I mean, this is, you know, changing technology and the changing and shifting realities of our lives. And, you know, while I don't think that we need to exactly follow the lead of others, but learning from their experience, I believe is helpful. There's part of me that, you know, gosh, I feel a little pushed around by this, and I think there's a history of pushing around by this, which you know, I don't take kindly, but I'm happy to put that aside with the interest of the greater good. So, do you have any insight into what other communities have done with regard to their PEG channels and PEG fees?
I can relate. The City of Independence does have a franchise with Charter, although because Monmouth is the fiscal agent for WMPEG, their agreement is also silent on the question of a fee or carrying the channel. I didn't do extensive research into other surrounding communities, but I can speak to my own experience in other communities not nearby necessarily, and that the I'm going to speak very plainly here. This is a fight that most communities lose in terms, and they're facing declining fee revenue and or never the opportunity to achieve getting PEG programming on their local channels. So, and maybe Mr. Shetterly has something to add.
Yeah, Chris, I don't have any specific community information for you, but a little background. Several years ago, a consortium of smaller communities banded together to negotiate a new charter agreement form with a franchise agreement form with Charter, with the idea being that small communities do get kind of kicked around by big Charter. And so by bringing a consortium together, there would be some strength in numbers in these communities. Hired one of the municipal law firms in the Portland area to negotiate for this consortium. We were part of that consortium. My recollection is that pretty much every other city in that consortium went ahead with basically this form of franchise agreement in substantial form, probably several years ago now, without the PEG fee provision. And really it was Monmouth that was kind of a holdout, trying to retain it. And so I think of that consortium, we're probably the last city to get to the point of adopting the franchise agreement now, just because Monmouth has held out for so long on that PEG fee, where other cities have just let it go.
And or not had a PEG, not had a
Well,
PEG
right, sure,
organization,
yeah,
right? We're kind of rare
Yeah.
in that. So Councilor
Now,
Oliveros.
I do have a follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
So the PEG and the term PEG, we continually use it. It stands for Public Educational and Government Access. It sounds like a lot of that's underutilized by us anyway. We do have the PEG channel, and it seems like it's working well online. Would Minnet residents receive a reduction in their bills? I understand that this is a pass-through fee, so if we say, well, don't worry about it, would they actually receive a reduction in their bills, or this is just something that's not being collected anyway?
So we do have a disparity right now today between what's happening with Charter and what's happening with Minnet. So Minnet agreed when the PEG fee was to be passed through, that $1 per household per month would be passed through to all subscribers. And as was noted by Councilor Oberst, at the point when Minet's platform was primarily online and not on cable, the number of subscribers paying that PEG fee and the amount of revenue dropped a great deal. But we have Minnet subscribers to thank for our WIMPEG fund balance for capital investments. So to your question, our Minnet franchise is also expired. And at the point when we begin the renewal process with Minnet, we would be looking probably to WIMPEG to ask I'll just say, put the investments in place to be able to stream the PEG content. And at that point, neither cable operator would need to pay that fee in theory. If we wanted to rescind it or not have it be part of the renewed agreement, then yes, in the end, if you were a Minnet subscriber and the PEG fee was eliminated, you would be seeing $1 a month in reduction in your bill. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but I had to get there.
And so right now, if you're a Charter subscriber and we do this right now, you'll see a reduction in your bill as well, correct?
No, Charter has refused to pass through the PEG fee and actually has never had it part of their franchise. Right. So Charter subscribers have not paid a PEG fee since it was 15 cents.
Well, it feels like we already lost this one.
Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Thank you, Mayor Coons. And mine is kind of in the same line as what Councilor Lopez and Ms. Wine were talking about. It's really that equity issue. And, if Charter isn't going to be expected to pay the PEG fee, then Minnet should not be expected to pay the PEG fee. I do want to point out that it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Minnet agreed to pay for it. And they are a huge part of our community. And so that does show that their commitment to our community and to the PEG channel. But again, to be equitable, I would expect that the same would be offered to Minnet as being offered to Charter.
Councilor McKeel, then Councilor Carey.
So there's a passage in your wrong computer, wrong mouse, in the second paragraph under the franchise agreement status that Charter refused to make capital investments to allow transmission of the PEG channel on its system estimated then at a cost of $170,000. And so I'm assuming then, with this conversation about MyNet, that MyNet has agreed to take on this cost of $170,000 to have a channel on their part. Is that correct?
It's not exactly, it doesn't exactly look like that. The head end for Charter's transmission system is in Dallas. And so the distance to be able to transmit the signal required a greater capital investment than for MyNet. But you're correct that MyNet agreed to carry our channel and to connect to their system at the time there were more cable subscribers.
But it wasn't a $170,000 proposition. Councilor Obers can tell you a little bit more detail about that because that was all his thing.
This will be really quick. I'll just say that there was already a fiber from MyNet to the university. The university serves as WinPeg's head end. So it was automatically connected with hardly any additional equipment required. And it is not MyNet paying the fee. MyNet collects $1 from every subscriber and passes it through to WinPeg. So it has been at no expense other than bookkeeping to MyNet all along. It would have been at no expense to Charter other than bookkeeping. Both systems had to reserve a channel, and that was what Charter refused to do, was make space on their package for this channel and provide the $170,000 to make the connection over to Dallas. When the original equipment died, the new equipment was $170,000. They wouldn't pay it.
So there's no cost to MyNet that. Okay, so it's not like we're providing Charter with a subsidy by saying essentially, no, don't worry about it. So my other question is, what happens if we don't have an agreement with Charter?
Well, the same thing that's been happening since 2018 when the agreement expires, which is the provisions of that agreement are, remain in place. And we have, in some cases, well, it's become quite out of date. So, and we have less enforcement authority for things that are.
There are good reasons to update and adopt a new franchise agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Carey?
My thoughts are along similar lines of what have been expressed. And frankly, if they don't want to provide the channel, which sounds like was initially, the space on their offerings for a PEG channel, that's fine. I'm not convinced that there's a lot of traffic on those anyway. But to have, I don't see the utility and allowing, a Charter to say, well, we're not going to pay it, and so we're going to say, well, that's okay. You've been a bad boy. And we're going to let you off the hook here, and at the same time keep MyNet on the hook. My suggestion would be is that as we're doing, we there may be a threshold if they get a much larger subscribership where we could demand that they provide a channel access, which is in the agreement as I read it. But if they don't want to do that, that's okay. But in the meantime, they ought to be collecting from their subscribers the same kind of fee that supports the same kind of programming. Now, they're not delivering it, but that's their choice. And and then if we dump the whole thing in the end, then we do both of them at the same time. I'm just not comfortable with, in effect, rewarding them while MyNet has been a good citizen. I could be convinced otherwise, of course, but that's my sense, and sounds like it's similar to others.
I'm going to go ahead and conduct the first reading. We have another opportunity to discuss this at our next meeting, so folks can talk through, think through, before we vote, but this is just our first reading. So if that's okay, I'm going to conduct first reading of ordinance number 1400 relating to cable system services in the city of Monmouth and granting to Spectrum Pacific West LLC, doing business as Charter Communications, a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a cable system within the city, creating new provisions and repealing ordinances 1184, the existing franchise dated February 4th, 2003, ordinance 1175, and ordinance 1184, and all prior conflicting ordinances. So we'll have more discussion next time. If you have additional questions between now and then, please send those to Marty, maybe, and copy Lane, and he can help you work through some of the other provisions of that contract you might have questions about. So, okay.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our last item on the business agenda before our reports and council comments, and that is information about ARPA funding, the federal coronavirus response that goes directly to cities. So.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Truly, this was an effort tonight to just give you a status report about what we are thinking about and what we know about what Monmouth will receive under the American Rescue Plan Act. There's an estimate by U.S. Treasury that over the next 2 years, Monmouth will receive $2.35 million from, we're calling it ARPA, right? The American Rescue Plan Act. The intent of the funding is to help state and local governments to respond to the pandemic. And there are four, the eligible funding uses fall into four categories, including responding to the public health emergency and its negative economic impacts, and then also, and to business and nonprofit impacts, and then also to respond to workers who are performing essential work, providing government services in the face of revenue reductions, and making necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So at the moment, what I wanted you to do, and the purpose of the staff report, was to give you the evolving list of the ideas that we have about ways we might possibly use this funding. And obviously, we're going to try to be as deliberate and thoughtful about what that will look like. And the purpose of the report was to just give you a sense of what we've brainstormed so far about either ways that we believe that we've seen harm in the community that needs to be repaired, or we know that the infrastructure investments are going to be so way with the funding that would come in to make investments that we might not have fully assembled funding for. And we're looking for ways to partner and leverage that funding so that if, for example, a federal infrastructure package or a regional project for water source and supply, which has been asked for, would come forward, that we might be able to use the funding in those ways. I won't spend a bunch of time recounting what's in the staff report, but mostly I just, in case you were wondering what we're thinking about. And I would say too, the thing we're wondering about right at the moment is, when will that money be received? So we've been waiting even just for the door to open for us to be able to apply for the funding, which is supposed to be happening this week because we're not an entitlement city. So anyway, so far we're trying to find ways to use the funding that would keep it within its purpose, and we're not in a hurry. We have, even as the funding comes in over 2 years and can be used probably most responsibly for one-time uses, we have until the year 2024 to fully utilize the funding. So really the point of I wanted you to know our beginning discussions about how that funding might be used. And I would welcome your thoughts and questions or curiosities about it.
And this isn't our first round of funding. We have received some prior funding, which we were able to use to reimburse ourselves, for example,
yes,
for emergency
coronavirus relief pack. Yes,
right.
The coronavirus relief fund that came in. We have been, yes, we've been seeking reimbursement. Our finance director, Janet Chenard, has done yeoman's work in making sure that many of our pandemic related, both costs and also ways that we were helping the community were, used and are getting reimbursed in that way.
And we've received additional funding for businesses, and they've received, we've been, Suzanne has done a report for us about a lot of that work that already has been done. So this is a great opportunity to leverage these funds to do more of that work or find some different things that really can set us up for the future, I think. So Councillor Carey?
I thought it was a very interesting and comprehensive list of things that was provided in the staff report. So thanks for that. And I think we all look forward to more detailed conversation. But a couple of things that stuck out to me besides some of the obvious ones. I'm wondering if we couldn't leverage some of this money into our City Hall project, particularly around security, physical security that I think I've sort of expressed some issues about our protecting our upstairs employees and so forth, as well as our, interface at the ground floor level. Also cyber, that seems to be the thing coming, right? I mean, every time we turn around, somebody's going to be holding up Monmouth because we are one cherry in the hackers world, man. They'd love to be able to nail us if they could. So if we could do something along that line, it'd be wonderful. And then I wonder about some sort of photovoltaic options for our City Hall. Whether that could be incorporated. I'm not sure it's part of the design, but with some additional dollars, I'm just simply asking. And then it was noted charging stations for electric EVs, if electric vehicles are coming, so we get out in front of that if we can. Now, whether that meets all of the things, Marty, that you just ran through, any of those, I'm not sure, but it might be that we could have them add those into our basket of considerations. Just thoughts.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep, anything to do with future resiliency is included. So, Councillor McKeel.
Sorry, I have two computers open. I'm trying to figure out which mouse to touch. So thank you, Ms. Wine, for this list. It really, some really good planning. I can see that the city department's already doing. I'm just looking at it though. I want to, can we keep a focus on the intention of the funding itself? And I know that they gave really wide parameters, and thank you, federal government, for that. But when it says the intent of the funding is to assist state and local governments in responding to the pandemic and mitigate its negative economic impacts. And then the A is to respond to public health emergencies or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, not-for-profits. And what I see in here are really things that we need to be paying for and purchasing. However, I don't see a lot of focus on what the needs of the Monmouth people need and small businesses need. So during that horrible heat, for example, during that really horrible heat, 114 degrees, I went out and bought a pizza because I wasn't going to turn on my oven. So I stopped at the pizza place and talked to the young person who, took my order at the counter, and I said, "Oh, it's the first time I've gone into a pizza place and it was cheap. It was cooler than the outside." And she looked at me actually with a bit of pain on her face and said, "Not by the ovens." And then I said, "Oh, well, I hope then tonight you can go home and cool off." And she said, "My air conditioner is broken." So there's real needs of people in Monmouth that we need to be, I think, focused on. I got an email from Brent DeMoe and about the number of people who use the cooling stations. And he sent a report to the county and said that 46 people utilized the cooling centers in Polk County. 27 of those people were in Monmouth Independence area. So we have somebody who works in an oven all day, not in an oven, outside an oven. She is really toasty brown by the end of the day and doesn't have, her air conditioner is broken. And I'm assuming it's because you're working in a low income low-paying pizza place. So I would really like to see, I'm sorry, I'm just babbling along, but it'd be really great to see how we can step in for people in Monmouth and help them, particularly with the, the climate change problems that they're going to experience with no air conditioning, et cetera. So, and thank you actually for including on this list. I do see the support for the opening up the Community Resource Center again. So really thank you for that. That's great.
Yep, lots of great ideas here. So again, not any particular hurry, not a request at this time to prioritize. We will, I think, hopefully find a way to create a reporting dashboard or something for transparency to our community. That's a huge effort, I think, on the part of all entities that are receiving these federal funds, is make sure we're really clear to our communities about how to use them. And as you can see, some of them are collaborative with other organizations. You mentioned the Community Development Corporation, CDC, but also Polk County. Polk County has approached each of the jurisdictions in Polk County to talk about water planning, long-range water access planning. And so probably some other ideas that we'll come up with partners, and we'll keep information going. But yeah, this is great.
Thank you.
All right. Our reports this evening, and mine will be brief. Actually, the one activity I've had since our last meeting was a meeting, our all hands meeting here in town with folks from the City of Independence, the University, the school district, the fire department, and other regional partners. And this particular last week, we had a representative of Pacific Power, and we had called that person in to talk about what we're hearing as far as the potential impacts of wildfire is the current concern, of course, but we've heard stories now that there may be preempted power grid shutdowns. And some of those, even if the wildfire is not in a local community, but they might be upstream from something. So we had Diana Knoss from Pacific Power, and obviously Pacific Power doesn't serve Monmouth, but we have representatives there from Independence and Dallas. But really the issue is huge. As we know, Bonneville Power Administration can choose to shut down its transmission lines, and that would obviously affect us. So very interesting information. Many representatives from Pacific Power there talking through what that looks like and the kind of notices that they give. And that's really all we can do. We can't tell them not to shut off power to avoid either causing or exacerbating things like wildfires during certain weather events. But it was very interesting to hear sort of how their notification plans go, and the fact that they are in constant communication. And Marty, I don't know if you got anything else from that, or sort of how we bring that into our community discussion.
I don't have anything specific except to say that the same ideas and questions that we discussed with the person from Pacific Power, we're having the discussion at Monmouth Power and Light related to how we get our power from Bonneville Power Administration. And I think the message there is we're going to try to put together community messaging to let folks know that if your power goes out in the summer, it's not because maybe something's happening right in town. It might be because it's something happening, elsewhere with the wildfires. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do to communicate about that now.
Yeah, it was really interesting work. And John.
Just quickly, and as you're talking about the interruption of power, just read a Bill Gates book about how to avoid a climate disaster. And one of the things he talks about was the need for large scale storage, electrical storage, and big batteries in a sense that could help on the smaller level. And so that might be something that we could, I don't know, that there may have been some discussion about that, cease and that, but just to get that into the lexicon and the things that we're thinking about, that might be something that Monmouth Power and Light could begin to look at along those very lines.
Yeah, Councillor McKeel.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to bring up under councillor comments a question about our strategies for looking at cooling centers, being that this is probably not the last time we'll see triple digit heats up like 114. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure not. In which case, do we need to be looking more strategically then with this threat that power could be shut off, having cooling centers with generators for our vulnerable population? So, I think I could probably last in the heat, but I know that there are people that would get very sick if they didn't have their air conditioner. So can the city really kind of look at what we can do in cooperation, obviously with the Polk County and Independence, but.
Yep.
The short answer to that is yes, we can look at it.
And yes, we will add that to the list. Obviously a resiliency issue, but there are a couple of other options coming together. I know the county's talking with other partners, and everyone is highly aware that we need to be more prepared for that next time in the future. So that
and I'm sorry, along with that though would be the reverse in the winter with the loss of power and so heat. So I didn't mean that we only. I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, I think we all got that this year too, right? Between ice storms and. We do have one board and commission appointment this evening. I hope you read the application from Colin Hulling. Colin is a Western Oregon University student and is interested in serving on the University Connections, Community Connections group, which is part of our Monmouth Engaged Commissions, and thought that it would be interesting to have a college student perspective on that, which we all agree with. And Phyllis, he lists an address of Sheridan, permanent address, and we do have an opening for an out-of-town person on that commission, so we can appoint Colin Hulling, and I would entertain a motion for that appointment.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst.
Second.
And a second from Councillor Bell. Sorry, Rebecca. And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Great. Thank you very much. We will let him know that he can join us and look forward to that perspective. And with that, I will ask if there are other reports from boards and commissions, and Councillor Salinas Oliveros has something for us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Coons. The Historic Commission, we met on July 7th, and it was actually a very exciting meeting. We talked about our mural project, the mural project, and the commission reviewed a proposal from Eileen Hinkle, and we agreed to move forward with Ms. Hinkle's proposal. She had a really good idea, really good perspective of our historical background and cultural themes in our city. So we're really excited about that perspective. And the next step is to check with property owner and business owners to make sure that they are supportive of the design and be willing to contribute to the project costs. Staff will also approach council and the URA for their approval and to see if urban renewal funds can be used for the project. The AARP grant was not approved, so other suggested funding strategy included exploring other grant opportunities. We also spoke about the Historic Photo Archive Project, and Suzanne introduced Lars Hodgen, the historic preservation intern, who's helping the city with cataloging historic photographs and posting them on the website. And we reviewed the first task that involves Lars creating a photo index spreadsheet with information on historic Monmouth photos. And then the commission then reviewed a number of historic photos shared on Google Drive, and we discussed places to find out more information about the photos. And that was really fun to find out more information. And Lars is scheduled to meet with Western Oregon University Archives and Polk County Historical Museum to research additional photos. And then, and Suzanne also noted that Mears will be hosting a 130th birthday party for the Howell House on Wednesday, August 25th from 6 to 8:30. The Historic Commission has been invited to host a historical display at the event, and George Jeffrey and Jim Mannion volunteered to staff the information table at that event. Our next meeting will not be until September 1st.
That's great. We certainly know Lars Haugen has some expertise at his disposal in the photography world, since his parents own Haugen's Portrait Gallery and longtime community members. So that's great to have someone on board to help with that project and all the other exciting projects. So thank you. Councilor.
I have a question for Councilor Salinas Oliveros. Councilor, did you share with the City Council the Independence History Timeline, the Monmouth Independence History Timeline? It's amazing. I received it from Kyle Jansen, who is the chairperson. I know his historian anyway. And I was really surprised at the history, as like, I didn't know that there was a Chinese family who was burned out. They owned a laundry in downtown Monmouth, and it was burned out. So we have quite a history that it's really good for all of us to know. And I copied and put it into the chat, and I'd be happy to hit send if you would like.
And that's great. It's actually on the city website, and I actually referred to it in the mayor's notes for this month.
I haven't seen my bill yet, so it's sorry, the newsletter. It hasn't
gone to print yet. It will. So,
oh,
yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll delete it then. I won't send it.
Oh no, you're welcome to share. Okay. The link is on the city website under the historic information. So under things to see and do.
And
So
I just want to thank you so much for the work of your commission, whatever that is. So thank you so much for all that work.
Yeah, it's a very great group with a lot of information and expertise. So we were very fortunate.
Excellent. Other boards and commissions. Councilor Bell, and then Councilor Over.
So the library board met July 14th, and we are missing 2 members, so we're short 2 people. It would be wonderful to have 2 individuals that would like to step up. We're meeting every other month now, so the next meeting will be September. Things are moving right along with some of the changes that are happening at the library in terms of furniture and heating and ventilation and replacing windows. Some of the things are held up, like the water filling station, because it's back ordered. So there are a number of things we're finding now because of COVID. Manufacturing slowed down a year ago, and so now trying to get products and things, they're harder to find. So we're waiting on that. The library is circulating the Wi-Fi hotspots and the launch pads. Furniture is going into the children's area. Curbside pickup, I believe, is still happening, but I think that will be being phased out as the library opens completely. And if you haven't been to the library, go. They've opened up the whole front area, and it's just very, very, very welcoming. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councilor Roberts.
Mine's so short. Parks and Rec was canceled again this month. Next meeting, second Wednesday in August, 6/11 at 6 p.m.
Are they out playing? Is that why?
They're spending all their time in the parks.
That's right.
Councilor Lopez.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a few brief reports tonight. The first was the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance has met since we met last. It was a shorter meeting than most. I think a number of communities at the time that we met were dealing with heat and the other issues that have faced our our region. So we had a lighter than usual attendance. A lot of that was focused on legislative updates and other matters that, on a grand scheme, will impact the future of how we deal with these issues in our communities. But unfortunately, that meeting was kind of overwhelmed by just everyone trying to react to the current crises of the heat and how that impacts the homeless. I will thank Carol McKeel or Councillor McKeel for her mention of the cooling centers that have been deployed in our community here. Similar efforts have been made in the greater region, and clearly there's a lot of work to be done in this arena. I hope that as we look at utilization of these funds moving forward, we really prioritize some of the ARPA funding to be able to better prepare for these crises in the future, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's increasing climate stability that impacts not only the homeless but us all. I'd also like to touch on the arts and culture. Oh, and I should note the next Homeless Alliance meeting is in early August 12th. And we are still holding these meetings virtually at 3 p.m. I'd also like to discuss the Arts and Culture Commission, and we had a special meeting of the Arts and Culture Commission last week, and that meeting included a lot of discussion around the debrief from the very successful event there at the park. We had an overwhelming turnout in the arts booth, to the point where we had to create more ballots for people to be able to vote on their favorite arts, and that was the very first day we already ran out of ballots. So I want to give a big thanks to everyone that helped out with that event, and a big thanks to Phyllis for keeping the train on the rails there. And we're really excited to do more with the community here moving forward. We also discussed kind of the future trajectory of this commission, and talked a lot about future opportunities. I think the general consensus was that we'd like to be more involved in our community, more involved in more ways, more often. And so part of that entails doing and partnering in initiatives throughout the year. And I know that we do some of that now, but escalating that a little bit and finding creative ways to reach out to the community. So with that in mind, we're holding another meeting this Thursday, informally in my backyard outside. And where we don't have an agenda, but we will be discussing ideas on how we can, as a commission, take a more active role. So if anyone would like to join, please let Phyllis know. My address is 533 Edwards Road South. But as I said, it's really an informal meeting just to try to brainstorm and see where we can take it for next steps. And the final report that I have is not an official board and commission here. It's dealing with the People of Color Caucus with the League of Oregon Cities. Madam Mayor, if you'd rather I save this for council comments, I'm happy to. I wasn't sure where this would fit best. So
go ahead. We're close to that, so go ahead.
Fantastic. So the People of Color Caucus is a newer caucus. It's been in the works for quite some time, and it's focused on elected officials, and the organizing body with it is the League of Oregon Cities, and so focusing on local elected officials. You may have heard some things in the news recently about a similar caucus on the legislative level. This is different, though. This is, that's really for our state legislators. This is for those of us that are, identifying as people of color on the local level. And this is brand new, as I said, a brand new caucus. We've just completed our second official meeting. There have been a lot of pre-meetings, getting the bylaws in place and laying the groundwork, but just completed our second official meeting. And we are really here to serve people of color that are in local government. Build and increase capacity of city officials, including creating a supportive pipeline for people of color to engage in and serve in local government, and of course also serving as a resource to the League of Oregon Cities, and having a voice in how it formulates its policy agenda. This is just some of the ways that we hope to be influential in the future. And I'll also report that Councillor Ed Junkins of Corvallis was our president. Unfortunately, he has stepped down because he has taken a job with Notre Dame and is stepping down from the council and moving out of the area. With these changes in the basis of the commission, or of the caucus rather, they voted me as vice president, the new vice president. So it's a big charge. We still have a long way to go, but I appreciate your patience with me as I provided a lot of background on this newly formed caucus.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that information. Any other boards and commissions? Then we'll hear our report from Marty Wine and finish up with additional council comments. So
great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have a couple of notes to catch you up on some things that I was going to include in Friday notes and then just decided to hang on to for now. But first, we had some water main damage yesterday. Maybe some of you have heard about it. We're now affectionately calling it geyser number 2 for 2021. Just before noon, we had a contractor who was removing asphalt with a driveway project over on North Knox Street and hit the city's water main. The water main is very shallow. It's a foot underground. And the theory is that that water main was installed in the 1960s before we had road development. So our public works crews responded right away. The water was shut down for the afternoon. They were able to restore service by 5:30 in the afternoon. Most of the impacted customers were apartment complexes and a few single family residences, and we tested the water and the samples came back clear today. So the boil water notice that we issued yesterday afternoon has been lifted. Longer term, the whole point of this is that you should look for on the CIP another water replacement project for our main. So if you see a new project on the next CIP, that's why. Last week in community and economic development, the city worked with Sparklet Designs and the Monmouth Business Association and Western Oregon University to put together a flyer for new student orientation the events that are coming up this summer. And it includes a map for eating and drinking establishments and links to the Quest scavenger hunt activity for students who are new students who are coming to town to learn about Monmouth. So we were happy to be included in that effort. Our CED staff has also met with Nikki Marazani, who's our chamber director, and she's looking at installing a reader board sign at the chamber location on 99W. So we're trying to figure out if there's a way to assist with our grant assistance program, or with urban renewal funds to assist with this with signs. So I just wanted you to know about that. And then the final note from CED from last week is that they received the much anticipated design review application for Taco Bell. I knew that would be popular, right? The Planning Commission is going to review that probably at along with the City Hall project at their August meeting.
the student body at Western just swooned. It's just,
Yeah, and Central High
And
School.
Central.
Yeah, that
You
was
love
the
being
biggest
there,
ribbon cutting
good
ever.
news, I'm sure. So
Yeah, that's why we said as long as the trolley will stop at Taco Bell and back to the high school so kids can get back to class on time, we'll be in good shape.
I'll make a note of that too. Okay, that's all I've got. Thanks, council.
All right, council comments.
So my family took a trip through the Intermountain West over the past week and
Councilor Obers.
rolled back into Monmouth on Saturday afternoon. And the clearest air we had on the whole trip was from the Sandy Ann Pass on down. And really nice to be home, nice to roll into our fair city. And, you know, amazing area, the Intermountain West, but the smoke is really bad. And we got a feel for those folks and for the folks in Southern Oregon right now who have what's probably going to become the largest fire in Oregon history reports done, which could be weeks or months before that thing is out. So, you know, think about those folks in Southern Oregon and know that the firefighters down there are in the fight of their life right now.
Councilor Belts.
I'll be absent from the next council meeting. I'll be traveling on company business. I will be in Orlando.
And Councilor McKeel.
Yeah, I would just like to take this opportunity to remind everyone about the roots of our area. Monmouth is located within the traditional homelands of the Lucky-Moot Band of Kalapuya. Following the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855, Kalamuya people were forcibly removed to the reservations in western Oregon. Today, living descendants of these people are a part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And Councilor Carey. And unmute, John, so we can hear the waves, the ocean.
I got a little different system going than what I normally do. So two things. One, we approved a new person for one of our boards and commissions. Recall that we had a discussion about being a little more intentional on our budget committee and planning commission committee. And I think we agreed that we were going to go back and sort of have a work session and do some review on that. Not in a big hurry to do it, but I just don't want that to fall off our radar screen. Now, in the community that I'm in, I read the local newspaper every day, and their local governing group is proposing a series of videos that they'll put on like their YouTube channel that talk about county and city government. And I thought, gee, that speaks to a lot of the outreach things that we've been talking about. The transparency that we like to talk about, outreach to a variety of different populations, things like, how do you testify, how do you make public comment, how do you lodge complaints, how do ordinances get passed, sort of the nuts and bolts things that, okay, and you say, well, I'd like to know what's on the agenda. Well, it's on the city website, but people don't necessarily recognize that. And we've got a lot of those kind of resources with the university, with WIMPEG, with just a lot of talent. We could create some informational, educational things that could reach a variety of different things, or at least would be available. So I'm going to flesh those out a little more when I get back, and I'll be able to talk a little more in detail about that. But I think it's a good idea, and I'd like us to sort of keep it in mind. So thank you.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun to get. Certainly we have, as you say, at the university, we've got a lot of folks in their public administration group that could help with that, and WIMPEG studio right there on campus. I bet it would be a neat and maybe the communications department, a neat collaboration. So we've got some contacts in those areas. So it would be really interesting.
It's a rebirth of Fraggle Rock.
And yeah, right. That's right. Fraggle Rock. Okay, any other comments? Then a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all for being here this evening, and we are adjourned.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Good to see everybody.
Yes.